The girl was laughed at during her relative's birthday party, reminding her that she was a stranger here. But when a black limousine pulled up to the gate, the laughter instantly stopped. Subscribe and write in the comments which city you are watching from. The morning had broken softly, its light slipping across the small kitchen table where Mary sat with a cup of coffee that had already cooled into bitterness. Bills lay in a stack nearby, corners curling from too many fingers, smoothing them flat, and the house carried the silence of a place that had known both laughter and long stretches of absence. When the doorbell rang, it startled her in a way that was almost physical, as though sound itself had pushed against her chest. She rose slowly, unsure who might bother to call at such an hour, and found a single envelope resting neatly inside the mailbox. It was heavier than it should have been, the paper thick, the surface gleaming with ivory sheen. A seal pressed into soft wax bore the initials A.M., and Mary already knew before she opened it who had sent it. Her sister Amanda had always favored these touches, the kind that spoke not of sincerity but of appearance, her belief that if something looked elegant enough, no one would see the hollowness underneath. Mary's thumb hesitated against the edge of the wax before breaking it. She told herself she already knew what it contained, that the words inside would follow the rhythm of so many summers past. The card was embossed in gold, each letter precise and controlled. We are delighted to invite you and Leah to celebrate Clara's birthday this Saturday. There will be games, laughter, plenty of food. It will be wonderful to have the whole family together again. The words gleamed like polished stones, smooth and without weight. Mary lowered the card to the table and stared at it, as if it might change meaning if she looked long enough. She remembered last year, and the year before that, the sharp comments disguised as jokes, the way certain cousins refused to meet her daughter's eyes, the way Amanda orchestrated the afternoon so that smiles and photographs suggested harmony, while silence and mockery simmered just beneath. Mary closed her eyes and pressed her fingers to her forehead. She could almost feel the tension that would build again, the way it always did. The thought of her daughter standing in that yard, surrounded by children who laughed without ever including her, made Mary's stomach twist. She left the invitation where it lay, as though ignoring it might delay the decision. But she knew the paper would wait, a silent burden on the table until she gave it an answer. By the time Leah entered the kitchen, headphones looped around her neck and sketchbook under one arm, the envelope was still there. Her daughter's gaze landed on it immediately, curiosity flaring in her eyes. She picked it up, her delicate fingers brushing the embossed letters, and asked in a voice filled with a hope Mary hadn't heard in a long while, "Is this from Aunt Amanda?" Mary nodded, trying to keep her expression unreadable. "It's for Clara's birthday." Leah's whole face lit up, as though the gray morning had been pierced by sudden sun. "Really? They invited us." Her words carried a kind of wonder, as if the mere possibility of being included was enough to spark joy. Mary felt the ache bloom in her chest again. She wanted to protect that hope, but she also knew what it would cost. "Yes," she said softly. "They want us to come on Saturday." Leah grinned. "It'll be fun. There will be so many kids, and games, and maybe this year will be better." Mary forced a small smile, though the edges of it trembled. She wanted to tell her daughter not to expect too much, that change did not arrive wrapped in balloons and cakes, but the brightness in Leah's eyes stopped her. Instead, she listened as the girl launched into plans. She spoke quickly, words tumbling over one another. She wanted to bring a gift that would stand out, something special. With determination, she decided on making an art journal, decorating its cover with painted flowers and tiny sketches, pouring herself into the pages. It would be her way of saying, "I belong here, too." The following days unfolded with the careful urgency of preparation. Leah spent hours at her desk, scissors and glue scattered around her, watercolors bleeding into soft patterns on thick paper. She stitched fabric onto the cover, whispering little tunes under her breath, as though sewing music into the seams. When she held up the finished gift, her eyes shone with pride. Mary kissed her hair, but inside she worried whether such earnestness would be recognized or trampled. The dress was the next concern. Leia pulled out a pale pink cotton dress she had saved from a school fair, its hem embroidered with tiny blossoms. It was simple, modest, but in her hands it became something more. She crouched on the floor, needle poised, mending loose threads and adjusting the fit with the concentration of someone weaving a future. Each evening she would slip it on, turn before the mirror, then sit down to fix another tiny detail. Finally, she left her curls natural, defined with care, and placed a headband across her brow. Her sandals were polished, and she set aside a necklace and bracelet that mattered not for their value, but for the memory of saving coins to buy them herself. Mary watched all of this quietly, sometimes helping by ironing the dress or checking the seams, but mostly bearing witness. She saw in her daughter not just a teenager excited for a party, but a child preparing armor for a battlefield. Every thread was a shield, every careful decision a plea to be seen. It filled Mary with equal parts admiration and dread. She longed to tell her that she was already enough, but knew those words would feel hollow if the world refused to echo them. The night before the birthday, Mary barely slept. She lay awake thinking of her late husband, James, and how he would have handled such an invitation. He had always hated gatherings with Amanda, sensing the quiet disdain behind every gesture. But for Leah, he would have gone. Mary thought of the way he hummed jazz when he was anxious, his fingers drumming a rhythm only he could hear. She wished he were here, to balance the weight that pressed against her chest. But it was just her now, and the daughter who believed still, despite everything that her family might one day welcome her. When Saturday morning arrived, the air was heavy with July heat. Mary packed her famous lemon orzo salad into a glass bowl, the dish Amanda always requested but rarely touched, and set it gently into the car. Leia carried the gift she had made, cradling it with the same care one might carry something fragile and priceless. They dressed in their best, not expensive but chosen with intent, and stepped into the sunlit day. As the car hummed along the road, the silence inside was not empty, but taut, filled with the things neither mother nor daughter could say aloud. Mary reached out once to rest her hand on Leah's knee, whispering, "You look beautiful." The girl's smile was shy but radiant. "Thanks, Mom." They exchanged no further words for miles, both lost in thought, one in hopeful anticipation, the other in cautious dread. When they finally turned into Amanda's neighborhood, Mary's breath grew shallow. The houses were nearly identical, brick facades lined with white shutters, manicured lawns trimmed with precision, hydrangeas blooming in measured perfection. At the end of the cul-de-sac stood Amanda's colonial, its symmetry almost suffocating. Cars crowded the driveway, laughter and music spilling into the air before they even opened the doors. Mary parked a distance away, unwilling to wedge her modest car between gleaming SUVs. As they stepped out, Leia adjusted her dress and clutched her gift tighter, eyes bright with excitement. Mary forced her shoulders back, inhaled deeply, and told herself she would endure for her daughter's sake. She repeated the words silently like a vow. Just one afternoon, for her. Together they walked toward the gate, mother and daughter stepping into the noise of celebration, into the familiar weight of expectation and judgment. Mary felt the world narrow around her. Every movement slowed, as if the day itself had drawn breath. She tightened her hold on the bowl of salad, and when the gate opened, the sound of children's shrieks and clinking glasses swept over them like a tide. The birthday had begun, and with it, the test they both had known was coming. The heat pressed down heavier by the time Mary and Leah stepped through the gate into Amanda's yard. Music floated from hidden speakers, some cheerful pop melody chosen to sound effortless, and the scent of grilled meat curled through the air. Children darted across the lawn in brightly colored clothes, their laughter rising like the shriek of birds, while clusters of adults stood with drinks in hand, forming small islands of conversation. For a moment, it almost looked idyllic. Balloons bobbing in the sun, a table covered with cupcakes and bowls of candy, a gaudy arch of balloons framing the patio where the birthday cake waited under plastic wrap. Yet beneath it all, Mary felt the weight settle the way it always did here, an invisible pressure that reminded her they were guests in a place that never really wanted them. Amanda appeared almost immediately, sweeping across the lawn with her white linen dress, swaying just enough to suggest elegance without effort. Gold bangles clinked softly at her wrist as she reached out, her smile broad and brilliant, though it barely touched her eyes. She folded Mary into a one-armed hug, quick and perfunctory, then let her gaze slide to Leah. For a fraction of a second, the smile faltered, then recovered with a polished brightness. "Look at you," Amanda said in a voice pitched for the guests nearby to overhear. "You've grown so much. That dress? Did you sew it yourself?" The question hung between compliment and barb, a remark that invited judgment disguised as curiosity. Leah shook her head shyly, murmuring no. "Well, it's unique," Amanda replied, her tone carrying that slight edge of amusement that cut sharper than open cruelty. Mary's jaw tightened as she placed the salad on the buffet table, aligning it carefully among bowls of potato salad and trays of sandwiches. When she turned, Amanda had already drifted back into her circle, glass of sangria in hand, laughter ringing lightly. Mary looked at her daughter, who stood straight, her gift clutched in both hands, eyes darting around as if searching for someone familiar. But no one came forward. Children swarmed past her toward the bounce house, shrieking with excitement, never pausing to ask her to join. Minutes bled into each other, and still Leah lingered at the edges. When the first group game began, a relay race with balloons children were divided into teams. Names were called, cousins rushed forward, pairings formed quickly, leaving Leah standing to one side. She waited with polite expectation, her shoulders squared, her smile hovering. But no one called her name. Eventually, a boy shrugged and said, "Teams are full," before turning away. The race began, laughter erupting as balloons popped, and Leah was left standing alone, the pink of her dress too bright against the shadow of the hedge where she retreated. Mary's throat tightened as she watched, fingers knotting together in her lap. She wanted to cross the lawn, to take her daughter's hand and lead her away, but she forced herself still. Leah deserved the chance to try, even if it broke them both. When the race ended, Amanda appeared again, balancing a tray of soda cans with an exaggerated sigh. "Children, be helpful," she called, but her eyes landed on Leah. "Sweetheart, would you mind passing these around? The adults are thirsty, and the kids are too busy running about." She placed the tray in the girl's hands before anyone could object, and swept off again toward the grill. Leah hesitated, the weight of the cans making her arms tremble slightly, then glanced at Mary. Her mother gave the smallest nod, though her stomach clenched at the sight. So Leah began her slow procession across the yard, offering sodas with a practiced politeness. Some adults took a can without looking at her, already turning back to their conversations. A few forced smiles, murmured thanks, but their eyes flicked elsewhere. The children exaggerated their manners, bowing or saying much obliged, with smirks that echoed the adults' quiet disdain. Each interaction pressed another layer of silence over her, and still she kept going, moving through the lawn with the grace of someone who had learned too early how to carry burdens. Mary could barely breathe. She sat at the edge of a picnic table, her paper cup of sweet tea untouched, and watched as her daughter moved like a shadow in the bright yard. The laughter was loud, but never wrapped around her. It bounced away as if she were made of glass. When one of Amanda's twins whispered to a cousin, and the two burst into giggles while glancing toward Leah, Mary's grip on her cup cracked the rim. She poured the drink into the grass and refilled it, needing something in her hands to keep them from shaking. The party continued, loud and cheerful for everyone else. Children shrieked in the sprinklers. Adults swapped vacation stories. Amanda glided from group to group, like a hostess in a carefully staged play. Leah finished distributing the cans and returned to the table with 2 left. She set the tray down quietly, her lips pressed together. Mary leaned toward her, whispering, "Why don't you grab a napkin for me, love?" A small excuse to step away. Leah nodded and hurried off, her sandals whispering against the grass. Mary turned back toward the grill, where Amanda was laughing too loudly at a cousin's story. The scene felt rehearsed, every gesture practiced, every smile slightly too sharp. This was never about family, Mary realized. It was a performance. Who had gained the most, lost the least, who could wear their superiority with the smoothest charm. And her daughter had been cast not as a guest, not even as a supporting character, but as the invisible extra who could be mocked for sport. When Leah returned, disaster waited. She passed near the dessert table where a woman balanced a plate stacked high with cookies. A small brush of contact, barely more than a sleeve against an elbow, was enough to tip the plate. 3 cookies tumbled into the grass. Leah bent immediately, murmuring apologies, but the woman gave a tight smile, loud enough for the nearby group to hear. "No need to be nervous, sweetheart. We're all family here," a cousin chuckled. "She looks like she's at a job interview." Laughter broke out again, sharp, unkind, gleeful in its cruelty. Mary froze. Her daughter remained bent, gathering cookies with steady hands. But Mary saw the tremor in her jaw, the quick swallow that kept tears at bay. She rose, ready to cross the grass, when a hand touched her arm. Her own mother sat nearby under the shade of an oak, her voice low and firm. "She needs to toughen up. The world isn't kind. Better she learns it here." Mary stared, stunned into silence. Her mother's tone was not cruel, but dismissive, as though Leah were an object to be hardened rather than a child to be protected. Mary jerked her arm free, fury rising. She no longer believed silence was survival. She stepped across the yard and stood beside her daughter, close enough to lend strength without words. Leah didn't look up. Her breath was shallow, her face carefully composed, but Mary saw the tremble at her chin. They moved to the shade near the hydrangeas, sitting apart from the bustle. Leah pulled her knees close, hands clasped tight. "What if we just left?" she asked softly, her eyes on the ground. Mary studied her for a long moment before answering. "Do you want to?" Leah hesitated. "I thought maybe this year would be different." The words cut deeper than anything Amanda had said, because they echoed the same fragile hope Mary herself had whispered that morning. She reached out and touched her daughter's wrist gently. "I thought so, too." The afternoon dragged on, heavy with heat and unspoken pain. Music thumped, glasses clinked, children squealed with delight. But for Mary and Leah, the celebration had narrowed into survival. Mary watched her daughter sit with quiet dignity, knowing each second pressed harder against her spirit. She felt her own resolve harden with the weight of it. And then, as the sun began to tilt westward, a new sound rolled across the cul-de-sac, a low, deep engine hum, smooth and deliberate, cutting through laughter and music alike. At first it seemed out of place, a distant vibration mistaken for thunder, but it grew louder, closer, until conversations faltered and eyes turned toward the driveway. Even the children paused in their games, mid-splash in the sprinklers, as the black limousine glided into view like a shadow cutting across the bright suburban tableau. The yard fell into sudden hush, the kind that spreads before a storm. Mary felt her daughter straighten beside her, felt the air shift as curiosity rippled through the crowd. The limousine rolled to a stop just beyond the gate, its polished windows reflecting the frozen faces of the guests. For the first time all afternoon, no one laughed. The celebration had changed, though no one yet understood how. Mary's heart beat faster, not from fear, but from some instinct that told her the tide had turned. She reached for Leah's hand, and this time the girl didn't pull away. The stillness that fell over the yard after the limousine arrived seemed almost unnatural, as though every sound had been sucked from the air and replaced with a waiting silence. The black car gleamed under the afternoon sun, its surface reflecting the hydrangeas, the startled guests frozen mid-conversation, and the drifting balloons that now looked suddenly childish beside it. Even the music faltered. Someone must have turned down the speaker, or perhaps the weight of the moment pressed it into quiet. Mary felt Leah's hand tremble faintly in her own, but the girl's posture had stiffened, her chin raised slightly, as if bracing for whatever came next. The driver stepped out first, tall and broad-shouldered in a dark suit that seemed impervious to the heat. He adjusted his cuff with calm precision and then moved to open the back door. Gasps whispered through the crowd when a woman emerged. She was elegant, her dark hair swept into a smooth knot, her blouse of pale silk tucked neatly into tailored trousers. She moved with a poise that carried its own authority, eyes scanning the lawn, not with idle curiosity, but with intent. It was clear she was not here by accident. Her gaze passed over Amanda, who stood near the grill with her glass of sangria, lips parted in shock, and landed instead on the girl half hidden by the hydrangeas. Mary felt the shift in her daughter's body as those eyes met hers. Leah's breath caught, her fingers tightening in the folds of her dress, but she didn't look away. The woman smiled faintly, a warmth that carried none of Amanda's rehearsed charm, and began walking directly toward her. The crowd parted instinctively, murmurs rising as guests tried to make sense of the intrusion. Amanda found her voice first, brittle with forced hospitality. "Excuse me, can we help you?" She stepped into the woman's path, smile stretched thin, trying to regain control of the scene, but the stranger barely slowed. She inclined her head politely, stepped around Amanda with the ease of someone sidestepping a shrub, and continued toward Leah. Amanda blinked, momentarily thrown off balance, and turned to follow, her steps hasty against the grass. The woman reached Leah and bent slightly, lowering herself to the girl's level. Her voice, when she spoke, was too quiet for the rest of the yard to hear, but Mary saw the way her daughter's eyes widened, the way her lips parted, as though words had deserted her. Mary's legs carried her forward almost against her will until she stood close enough to catch the conversation. "Miss Mary Carter?" the woman asked, standing now and extending a hand. Mary nodded, throat tight. "Yes." "My name is Amelia Blackwell. I've been trying to reach you through your daughter's school. They weren't certain you would be here today." Amanda's sharp laugh sliced the air behind them. "This is some kind of mistake, surely. Leah just draws cartoons in a notebook." "She isn't." Mary turned on her, her voice sharper than she intended. "They're not cartoons. They're her art." Amelia remained calm, her gaze steady. "A few months ago, your daughter submitted a composition and a visual project to her counselor. It was forwarded to us as part of a statewide arts initiative. We received over 300 entries. She looked at Leah then, her smile softening. Hers stood out immediately. She's been selected for the Rising Creators Program, a mentorship partnership with the National Conservatory for the Arts. It includes a full summer scholarship, travel, and lodging. She would work directly with leading mentors in music and design. The silence that followed cracked like glass. Someone dropped a fork. A plastic cup slipped into the grass. All around them, guests stared, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief. Amanda's smile collapsed entirely. Her lips pinched as she sputtered. But she's just a child. She's never even had real classes. Amelia's reply was cool, precise. Talent doesn't always wait for instruction. It grows in quiet places. And when recognized, it deserves to be nurtured. Mary turned to her daughter then, and her heart nearly broke. Leah stood trembling, but not from fear. Her eyes were wide, shimmering with something new, something unrecognizable at first, until Mary understood. It was recognition. It was worth. It was pride unfurling like wings. The girl clutched the envelope Amelia handed her, sealed with a golden crest, and touched its edge with reverence, as though afraid it might vanish. Amanda tried once more, her tone falsely light. Surely you can't expect her to leave now. This is Clara's birthday. We're in the middle of a celebration. Mary's patience snapped. She turned on her sister, voice clear enough for the entire yard to hear. Celebration? You humiliated my daughter. You mocked her dress, her presence, her very existence. That isn't family. That's cruelty dressed as tradition. And I'm finished pretending otherwise. A ripple ran through the guests. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others shifted, as though caught in a truth they had always known but never dared to name. Amanda's mouth opened, but no defense came. She glanced toward their mother for support, but the older woman remained seated under the oak, her face unreadable, her fan fluttering nervously. Amelia's voice cut gently through the charged silence. The welcome dinner is this evening. A car is prepared. If Leah chooses to accept, she can come with us today. Mary turned to her daughter. Leah clutched the envelope, her breath quick and shallow, her eyes darting between her mother and the limousine. Mary's answer was steady, resolute. Go get your bag. Leah blinked. What about, we're done here, Mary said louder this time, her words carrying across the yard. Go. The girl didn't hesitate again. She ran across the grass, sandals beating a rhythm like triumph, her pink dress fluttering behind her. Amanda stepped into Mary's path, desperate now. Don't be dramatic, Mary. This is childish. Mary's eyes burned with fire she had kept locked away for years. No. What's childish is pretending cruelty is love. You tried to make her small. You failed. She doesn't need you. Neither do I. The limousine door opened as Leah returned with her backpack slung over one shoulder. She hugged her mother tightly, face pressed into her neck, then pulled back with clear eyes. Amelia guided her toward the car, her hand gentle against the girl's back. The driver closed the door softly, and with a low hum, the limousine rolled away, carrying Leah beyond the cul-de-sac, beyond the judgment of those who had never truly seen her. Mary stood alone in the sudden quiet, the conservatory's envelope still warm in her hands. She turned to the faces that had so long defined her family. You didn't break her, she said softly. You tried, but you failed. No one spoke. Balloons tugged against their ribbons in the hot breeze. The grill hissed unattended, and the music remained silenced. Mary turned and walked back through the gate toward her own car. Each step was lighter than the last, as though the years of strained smiles and swallowed pride were slipping off her shoulders with every pace. The drive home was quiet, the hum of the engine steady beneath her hands. For once, Silence did not feel like absence or fear. It felt like something had settled, something that had always been off balance, finally finding its place. At home, the light painted her modest living room in gold and shadow. The leather chair where James once read sheet music sat in its usual corner, the framed photograph of him holding newborn Leah resting on the wall. She lowered herself onto the couch, the envelope still clutched tight, and let the tears come. Not in sobs, not in torrents, but quietly, steadily, like water seeping through cracks in a dam too long held. They were not tears of regret. They were tears for the illusion she had finally let go, of the illusion that if she endured long enough, her family would soften, that if she swallowed her pride and smiled through the bruises, one day they might accept her daughter. But they had never intended to, and she no longer cared. Her phone buzzed beside her. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Your daughter arrived safely. We will update you after dinner." Attached was a photo. Leah stood in front of a hotel, dress still perfect, backpack over her shoulder. She smiled, not the careful, guarded smile she wore at barbecues, not the uncertain one she gave when trying to fit into spaces that rejected her. This was open, radiant, proud. A smile that belonged to someone stepping into her own life. Mary pressed the image to her chest and closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt not dread, not weariness, but a kind of fragile, trembling hope. The turning point had come, and they had walked through it. The evening air settled heavy and warm as the limousine disappeared around the bend of Amanda's pristine cul-de-sac, leaving behind only silence and the faint echo of its engine. Mary stood rooted on the lawn, her eyes fixed on the spot where her daughter had vanished into that glossy vessel of opportunity. The faces of her relatives lingered in her periphery, but she did not turn to them. She no longer needed their reactions, their excuses, their brittle laughter. For the first time in years, their silence had no hold on her. She tightened her grip on the envelope, felt its weight anchor her resolve, and then walked steadily to her own car without a backward glance. The drive home passed in a blur. She was vaguely aware of traffic lights changing, of the shadows lengthening across quiet streets, of neighbors strolling with dogs or children on bicycles weaving along sidewalks. None of it touched her. She carried within her a strange mixture of exhaustion and fierce clarity, as though something had broken open inside her chest, spilling both grief and liberation in equal measure. When she pulled into her modest driveway, the porch light clicked on automatically, illuminating the small house that had sheltered so much of their struggle. She sat for a long time behind the wheel, her hands resting loosely, her body unwilling to move. The car ticked softly as it cooled, and finally, she released a long breath and stepped into the stillness of home. Inside, the rooms felt different. Familiar. Yes, the worn sofa, the creak of the floorboard near the hallway, the faint scent of lemon cleaner lingering from the morning, but suffused now with absence. For so long, Mary had braced herself to hold her daughter's fragile hope against the weight of rejection. Tonight, for the first time, she was alone with her own thoughts, and the absence was not emptiness, but space. She lowered herself onto the couch, the envelope still clutched in her hand, and let her tears come. They slid quietly, burning trails down her cheeks, not because she doubted her choice, but because years of suppressed sorrow finally demanded release. She wept for the girl who had carried a tray of sodas through a yard full of relatives who refused to see her, for the woman who had endured silence in the hope of eventual acceptance, for the family that had chosen cruelty and indifference over love. But underneath it all, she wept with gratitude too, that her daughter had been seen at last, not by those who had failed her, but by those who recognized the brilliance she carried. When her phone buzzed on the cushion beside her, she wiped her face with the heel of her palm and glanced at the screen. An unknown number had sent a message. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The words were simple. "Your daughter arrived safely. We will update you after dinner." Beneath the message was a photograph, and when Mary tapped it open, her breath caught. Leah stood in front of a tall glass building, her pink dress still crisp, her backpack slung confidently over one shoulder. The evening light caught her curls, turning them to a halo, and her smile open, unguarded, unashamed radiated a joy Mary had not seen in years. It was not the careful smile she wore at barbecues, nor the strained one she practiced in school photographs. This was different. It was the smile of someone who had stepped into her own life. Mary pressed the phone to her chest, closing her eyes as if to hold the image inside herself. Hours passed slowly after that, each tick of the clock heavy with waiting. She moved restlessly through the house, straightening objects that needed no straightening, folding laundry that had already been folded, cleaning a spotless counter. Her mind returned again and again to the photograph, to the look in her daughter's eyes. When the phone finally rang just after 10, she snatched it up before the first ring had fully faded. "Hi, Mom." Leah's voice was soft, but there was something steadier in it, a grounding Mary had never heard before. "Sweetheart," Mary whispered, her throat tight. "Are you okay?" "I'm more than okay." Mary could hear the smile in her words. "Dinner was amazing. I met other students. There's a girl from New York, another from Oregon. Everyone's really nice. They gave us journals with our names on them. Tomorrow I get to meet my mentor, a real designer." A laugh burst from Mary's chest, sudden and breathy. "You sound like you've been waiting for this your whole life?" There was a pause, then Leah's quiet reply, "I think I have." They spoke for 10 more minutes, the conversation ordinary and extraordinary all at once. When it ended with an unhesitant, "I love you," Mary stayed sitting in silence long after the line went quiet, her heart swelling with both pride and ache. The next days unfolded with new rhythms. Amanda posted carefully curated photographs from the birthday on social media, captions gushing about family and pride, pretending she had been supportive all along. Mary stared at one of them in disbelief, a snapshot of children playing beneath a banner, Amanda's words beneath it, claiming, "Family first. So proud of our talented next generation. Always cheering for you, Leah." The audacity of it was almost laughable. Relatives chimed in with congratulations, some pretending surprise at news of Leah's program, others acting as though they had always believed in her. Mary didn't reply. She no longer felt compelled to. Later, her mother sent a brief message. "I hope we can move past all the drama. Life is too short." No apology, no acknowledgement, just the same denial dressed as wisdom. Mary deleted it without responding. Meanwhile, Leah blossomed. Each evening she called home with stories that carried the excitement of discovery. She described her mentors, the classes, the sketches she was working on, the notes she wrote in the margins of her music sheets. She sent photos of fabric swatches pinned to corkboards, snapshots of new friends, glimpses of rehearsal rooms filled with instruments and light. In every image, her smile widened, her shoulders squared with confidence. By the 5th week, she spoke not with hesitation, but with certainty. Her counselor called Mary to confirm her acceptance into an advanced arts program, no audition required, based solely on her portfolio and the strength of her summer work. Mary pinned photographs of her daughter to the corkboard in their hallway. She replaced an old family picture, taken at a barbecue 3 years prior, with one of Leah holding her official invitation under the conservatory's emblem. Every time she walked past, she felt the weight of change. When the final showcase arrived, Mary drove into the city with her heart hammering against her ribs. The auditorium glittered with light and anticipation. Parents and faculty filled the rows, the air humming with promise. One by one, students presented their projects, each met with applause. And then it was Leah's turn. Mary's breath caught when a model stepped onto the stage, wearing her daughter's creation. The dress flowed like music itself, layers of fabric stitched with floral patterns and musical motifs, pale pinks and silvers dancing together in harmony. It was confident, yet gentle, bold, yet tender. It was Leah's voice made tangible. The audience erupted in applause, and Mary's eyes filled with tears. She saw judges lean forward, whisper to each other, nod with approval. Backstage afterward, Leah ran into her mother's arms, her face alight with wonder. "I can't believe I did that," she whispered. Mary held her close. "You didn't just do it. You soared." The drive home was quiet, the cool night air flowing through the open windows. Leah gazed out at the lights flashing past, then turned, her voice soft but certain. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" Mary didn't need to ask who she meant. After a long pause, she answered, "Maybe. Or maybe it doesn't matter anymore." Leah nodded slowly, her smile faint but steady. "I don't think I need them to. Not really." Mary reached across the console and took her daughter's hand. For miles they drove like that, hand in hand, leaving behind not only the city, but the years of silence and dismissal. They no longer sought a place at someone else's table. They had built their own. And in the quiet rhythm of the road beneath them, Mary knew that was the beginning they both deserved. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one. Take a moment to watch our other videos for more powerful stories still to come. And please share this video with your friends and family. Some stories are too important to keep to yourself.